All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us begin. So this morning, Yemir Hashem, we are beginning Os Ayin Aleph in Tzidkas Hatzaddik. I sent it out yesterday on the WhatsApp chat, and we're going to get over here a really beautiful and incredible idea. If you notice, by the way, sometimes these sections of Reb Tzaddik flow into each other, and sometimes they don't. So in Os Ayin, we were dealing with an incredibly profound idea that from destruction comes incredible building, and from sin comes cathartic growth. In Ayin Aleph, the Rebbe switches gears a little bit, and he writes as follows. We're picking up, it's marked page Kuf Samich Tes, Os Ayin Aleph, and we're going in the Bi'urei Chasidus, the bottom right-hand column. Says the Rebbe, Im hispalal ulavakesh me'Hashem yisbarach, liros ra'as shum adam Yisrael. A person should never daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to see the Ra, to see something terrible happen to another Jew. A person shouldn't daven to see something terrible happen to another Jew. Va'afilu rasha gomer, even if that other Jew is a complete rasha. Kimosha Amru Chazal, as Chazal said, Alakosov Yitamu Chatam min haaretz, Yitamu Chotim in Ksiv b'pasuk. So let's take a step back over here. So we'll discuss where Reb Tzaddik gets this from. So the notion that even if someone is a rasha, one should not daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for some misfortune, for something negative to occur to that person. Now, where does this concept come from? If you take a look in the Mekoros, the footnotes, on the bottom, you'll see footnote Reish Samich Gimel. Right? In footnote Reish Samich Gimel, he writes as follows, B'gimar Bracha Sham, listen to this story. Hano Bar Yoneh, Dahave Bishvivuse D'Rabbi Meir. There were these Bar Yonim. Bar Yonim are ruffians, right? No goodniks. Right? There were these no goodniks that were in the neighborhood of Rabbi Meir. And these guys were causing Rabbi Meir an incredible amount of difficulty. Rabbi Meir wanted to daven that they should die. This is the Maisa. We saw some brachas. He wanted to daven that they should die. They were causing him so much tsar, they should die. Bruria, his wife, said to him, "My daitech, what are you thinking? In other words, why would you daven for them to die? Mishum dichsev yitamu chatoim, miksiv chotim, chatoim ksiv." So listen to this. Bruria had such an incredible diuk, such an incredible insight on the pasuk. She said, does the pasuk say, yitamu chotim min haaretz, that sinners should cease to exist in the world? No, what does it say? Yitamu chatoim, sin should cease to exist from the world. Not sinners, but sin. Vod, shafel is Seif for the Krah. Furthermore, she said to Rabbi Meir, look at the end of the pasuk. What does the end of the pasuk say? Orishaim od einam, and the wicked will be no longer. So how do you read that pasuk? Kevan di tamu chatoim orishaim od einam. Once you remove the sin, there are no more sinners. What Bruria was telling her husband, well, let's finish. Rather, Bruria said to her husband, daven for them. Daven for their benefit. Daven for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have compassion on them. They should do tshuva, or sha'im odinam, and they will no longer be wicked. Sure enough, boi racham iluya v'hadru b'tshuva. Rabbi Meir davened on behalf of these Rishayim. They did tshuva and they became tzaddikim. Or at least, I don't know if they became tzaddikim, but they did tshuva. So the story is fascinating for two primary reasons. Number one, what Bruria was saying to Rabbi Meir is that essentially there aren't bad people, there are just good Jews who do bad things. And a person sometimes has to be able, when they look at the other, to be able to differentiate this idea. Very often we automatically assume that we characterize the character of someone based on their actions. If you do something bad, that means you are a bad person. And what Bruria was trying to highlight was this incredible yesod, that's not necessarily the case. Are there bad people? Of course there are bad people. But very often there are good people who do bad things. And if you're just able to stop the bad things, to remove the bad things, the inner good ultimately comes out. So instead of davening, says Bruya to her husband, for these guys to die, daven that they should do tshuva. And if they do tshuva, yitamu chatoim min haaretz, let sin cease from the world. And if there's no sin, urishaim od einam, there will be no rishaim. The person, the gavra, is good. Just sometimes the gavra corrupts himself with the wrong actions. If you correct the actions, the gavra, the individual, is restored to his primary good. I will say, what Bruya was telling Rabbi Meir was essentially, this concept is the cornerstone of tshuva. Right? Without this concept, tshuva would be impossible. Without this concept, if I commit an avera, I'm bad. If I'm bad, so is there really some significant degree of hope for my salvation or personal restoration? This entire yisod, I'm a good person who does bad things. I may do bad things very frequently. That's quite possible. I may even do more bad things than good things. But at the end of the day, my inner good still exists on some level. It's just often eclipsed and tarnished by the negativity. Remove the negativity, remove the sin, and at the end of the day, the good comes out. As an aside, by the way, I'm sure you remember, when we did this sugya in Brachos, there's another famous kasha on this sugya, which is, how do you daven for people to do tshuva? Right? Meaning, at the end of the day, the Gemara says, Hakol b'dei shamayim, except Shvat chutz, mi'ira shamayim. Yira shamayim is your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your relationship with Hashem. At the end of the day, is up to you. Is up to you, right? The Gemara Maseches Nida says, Kadosh Baruch Hu determines how tall or how short you're going to be, how rich or how poor, how smart or not smart you're going to be. All of that Kadosh Baruch Hu determines. The one thing that Rebbe Shalom does not determine is what the nature of your Yirah Shamayim is going to be. Who you are on a Yirah Shamayim level is absolutely up to you. So it is interesting that over here the Gemara is interesting. So you would normally think, you can't daven for someone to be a Baal Tshuva. You can't daven for someone to be Baal Tshuva. So we'll say, so there's a lot of different answers to this. It always bothered me a little bit. And then I realized the answer was in yesterday's daf. This is incredible how this intersect often happens. The answer was in yesterday's daf. Because remember again, we saw the Gemara said, Ha'omer, Sela Zulat Staka, B'shvil Sheyichye B'ni. Let this Sela go for tzedakah in order that my son should live. And remember again, we saw the beautiful insight by the Chozeh of Lublin. And what did the Chozeh say? You remember again, the Chozeh said, there was the pshat. It's not talking about physical life, but rather it's talking about spiritual life. That at the end of the day, a person could give tzedakah, do ma'asim tovim, in order that their child should spiritually live. That's the whole yisod. That's the whole yisod. Right? So you see that there's a concept of engaging in dynamic spiritual activity for the benefit of someone else. So perhaps that's the yisod over here as well. At the end of the day, can you daven for someone else to do tshuva? So you could daven that your zechuyos should emirtz Hashem push someone else, push their merit in the right direction. The same way that I could daven for the ruchnius, that I'm obligated to daven for the ruchnius, do mitzvos for the ruchnius of my children each and every day. So too, again, perhaps that's the pshat in the Gemara. How do you influence someone else's ruchnius when ruchnius is the one thing that's in a person's own control? So perhaps, again, when I daven and I do mitzvos and I direct those zechuyos for the benefit of the other, then ultimately that has a cathartic effect on that person as well. They don't say, that happens not to be Reb Tzaddik's Yisod. Reb Tzaddik's Yisod, going back, we have another minute, we'll just focus on this. Go back up now top to the Biorei Chasidus. So the Rebbe writes, he says, therefore, Im lehispalal ulevakish me'Hashem yisbarach liros rosh shum adam Yisrael. A person should never daven that something terrible should happen to another Jew. Vafilu Rosh Gomer. Even if this Jew is a Rosh Gomer. Let's say an incredible yisod. We'll see why this is. You should never daven for misfortune to befall another person, even another Jew, even if that Jew is a Rosh Gomer. And now the Rebbe quotes the Gemara Maseches Brachos, where again, Rabbi Meir wanted to daven for the misfortune of these individuals. Bruria intervened and said, don't do it. Why? Yitamu chatoim velo yitamu chotim. V'zeu, Shabbos says, listen to this, then we'll stop. So this is interesting because why not? Why not? If somebody is a Rasha, right? If somebody is a Rasha and somebody's evil and somebody, so why can't you daven for their misfortune? In other words, so look what he writes. First of all, the Rebbe qualifies and he says, V'zeu klal hanoig rak ba'adam shuhura la-shamayim v'chote bebein adam lamakom bilvad. When can't you daven for the misfortune of someone? When ultimately, again, they are an individual who is ra la-shamayim. A person who is terrible in his bein adam lamakom. Person who's a Rasha, mamish, violates every single mitzvah, tramples upon halacha. Such a person, a Rasha like that, you don't daven for his misfortune. Ach eino chote ba'aver shevein adam lechavero. Sha'al adam kazeh in levakish Hashem yisbarach she'anish. We'll say, listen to these words. Aval adam shehu ra lebrios v'chote b'mein adam lechavero anshahu mida k'neged mida. So Reb Tzaddik says you can never daven for the misfortune of another Jew, even if he's a Rasha. And a Rasha meaning what? Even if he's terrible and he's been Adam Lamakom, you see that Imam tramples on mitzvahs, tramples on Torah, tramples on halacha. But if a person is terrible and he's been Adam L'chavero, if a person is terrible and his interpersonal mistreats people, hurts people, then ultimately says Reb Tzaddik, Ansho Humida Kineged Mida. Such a person like that receives a punishment that is Mida Kineged Mida, reciprocal. Ulachein, v'lachein, k'shim shu mevakesh shia ra lezulaso, ba'osa hamida yi'anish bekach shemutar levakesh, ulispala lahashem she'anish ara aso gamkein. And ultimately, again, says Reb Tzaddik, there's a Mida Kineged Mida. Because when a person is terrible and has been Adam L'chavero, and therefore he actively seeks out negativity towards the other, so ultimately I am permitted to go ahead and beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu to visit negativity upon that person as well. So I will say, we're going to stop over there for today. We're leaving off in a little bit of an uncomfortable spot, right? Because the notion of davening for the misfortune of any Jew seems to be a little bit counter to how we would think to act as people. But yet Reb Tzaddik is making this profound distinction. We never daven for the misfortune of a Rasha if he's a ben Adam l'makom Rasha. But if someone is a ben Adam l'chavero Rasha, says Reb Tzaddik, it is permitted to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to visit justice, so to speak, upon that individual. Why, how, the deeper meaning of that, Emir Hashem will continue tomorrow. Shkaya.